The small town of Cedar Springs had always been quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. And the sound of children playing outside mixed with the occasional rumble of a passing pickup truck. But that Tuesday afternoon, the usual calm was shattered. Little Tommy Reynolds, a 7-year-old with a mop of unruly brown hair, burst into the local diner, tears streaming down his cheeks. They hurt my grandpa, he cried, clutching the edge of the counter. His voice cracked, and for a moment, the chatter of the lunch crowd stopped. People stared, unsure whether to intervene or call someone. Tommy's eyes were red and puffy, and he could barely get the words out between sobs. The diner's owner, Maggie, a stout woman in her 50s with kind eyes, knelt down beside him. "Tommy, honey, slow down. Who hurt your grandpa?" They jumped him. In the alley by the gas station. "Bad men," he stammered, shaking. His little hands trembled as he wiped his face on his sleeve. Maggie felt her stomach tighten. She had known Tommy since he was a toddler and had watched him grow up alongside his grandfather, Joe Reynolds, a retired Marine Corps veteran and a beloved figure in Cedar Springs. By now, several of the regulars had gathered around. Among them was Sheriff Dan Callahan, a broad-shouldered man with graying hair and a reputation for keeping the peace in this sleepy town. He knelt beside Tommy, his voice calm but firm. "All right, buddy, take a deep breath and tell me exactly what happened." Tommy sniffled and took a shaky breath. They came out of nowhere. Grandpa was walking home from the diner, and they hit him, knocked him down. I tried to run after them, but they got away. A hush fell over the diner. The town had seen its share of petty crimes, but violence against Joe Reynolds, that was unthinkable. Joe wasn't just any retiree. He was a war hero, a man who had served his country with honor and now spent his days helping out at the community center, teaching kids about resilience and courage. Sheriff Callahan's jaw tightened. "Tommy, I promise you we're going to take care of this. But first, we need to get your grandpa checked out." He motioned to Maggie, who quickly grabbed a phone to call an ambulance. Tommy's sobs continued, but now mingled with fear for the man who had been his rock for as long as he could remember. As they waited for the ambulance, whispers started among the patrons. Some mentioned the Hells Angels, the notorious motorcycle club known to operate in the state. Rumors had swirled that a local chapter had been seen in Cedar Springs recently, but no one had imagined they would cross paths with a quiet town veteran. Tommy's tiny hands clenched the counter. "They can't hurt him. He's my grandpa," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. His sobs muffled but unwavering. Outside, a black motorcycle's engine rumbled faintly down the street, a sound that would soon mark the beginning of a reckoning nobody in Cedar Springs would forget.
The rumble of motorcycles echoed through the streets of Cedar Springs late that afternoon. By now, word had spread about what happened to Joe Reynolds, the town's revered veteran. Eyes followed the sound, and whispers grew into murmurs of anticipation and fear. On the outskirts of town, a group of men on black leather bikes had gathered. Their jackets bore the unmistakable insignia of the Hells Angels. They weren't here for trouble. At least, not for ordinary trouble, but for Joe Reynolds, a man whose reputation for integrity and courage extended far beyond Cedar Springs. When word had reached them, through quiet channels known only to a select few, that a local hero had been attacked, there was no debate. Action would be swift. Meanwhile, Tommy sat by his grandfather's bedside at Cedar Springs General Hospital. Joe was awake, bruised and bandaged, but his spirit remained unbroken. He reached out and took Tommy's small hand in his, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "It's going to be all right, kiddo," he said. But even he knew that the men responsible wouldn't get away without consequences. By evening, the Hells Angels arrived in town. Their motorcycles rumbled like distant thunder, drawing the attention of anyone still on the streets. They parked strategically, a silent army preparing for a reckoning. Local law enforcement watched cautiously from a distance, unsure whether to intervene or simply observe. The Angels had a reputation that preceded them, a code of justice that often bypassed conventional law, especially when it came to protecting someone they respected. The men responsible for attacking Joe had been bragging in a nearby bar, thinking their actions would go unnoticed. That illusion shattered the moment the Hells Angels entered. The atmosphere changed instantly. Conversations halted, glasses were set down, and a thick tension filled the room. One by one, the men realized the mistake they had made. "Joe Reynolds doesn't get hurt," growled one of the Angels, a large man with a scar across his cheek. His voice carried an unmistakable authority that silenced the room. "And anyone who lays a hand on him answers to us." By the end of the night, justice, or at least the Angels' version of it, had been served. The attackers were left shaken, their lesson etched in fear and respect. The Hells Angels didn't boast or gloat, they simply ensured that the town knew that Joe Reynolds was untouchable. Back at the hospital, Tommy hugged his grandfather tightly. They came for you, he whispered, a mixture of relief and awe in his voice. Joe chuckled softly, his hand resting over Tommy's. Sometimes, he said, it takes more than one kind of courage to protect the people you love. As the motorcycles faded into the night, the town exhaled collectively. Cedar Springs returned to its quiet rhythm, but the memory of that day, of a little boy's tears, a veteran's courage, and the Hells Angels' unexpected justice, would linger forever. Tommy knew one thing for certain. In a world that could be cruel and unfair, there were still people who would rise to protect those who deserved it most. Outside, under the glow of streetlights, the rumble of engines disappeared into the distance, leaving a town forever changed, yet grateful that heroes came in many forms.